truecrowns2101@gmail.com. You can contact me if you've got any questions at the end. It's a 2-hour-long video. Have a blessed day.
The fifth book of Moses, called Deuteronomy. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come on thee, and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kine, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thine hand unto, and he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, and walk in his ways. And all people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee. And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy ground, in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. The Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thine hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. And the Lord shall make thee the head, and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, and thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
So that the residents will not see what was happening. Though they knew, they also anticipated escapes. So the whole harbor was walled up to the wharf. From the wharf to this castle was a restricted area called the European Beach. So, yes. This served as the official entrance into the castle. And in front of it, we may describe it as the arrival and departure lounge. Between the harbor and the ships, one of them might have decided not to go. So he will just jump into the ocean, pulling the rest with him, and they will all drown here. So either they wanted to escape or just to commit suicide. So you can imagine a morning after departure here, bodies floating with chains around them. From here they were taken to the Americas, the Caribbeans, and the West Indies. Across the Atlantic, one captain who was given an evidence before a fact-finding commission was asked, how comfortable are the captives on board the ships? His reply was, they are as comfortable as you may feel in your coffin. And the ships were described as floating coffins. They were made to lie naked on planks or wood. Occasionally they let them out and caned them to dance for exercise, called a dancing by the whip. Those who survived were sold to plantation owners and the miners who used them on the farms and the mines. And of course, the proceeds went into building America and Europe. This is now a fishing harbour. And fishing is the backbone of the local economy.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field.
2 bodies of ex-slaves were exhumed in America and Jamaica. They were brought back through this door to reverse the trend of no return, so that the descendants of the survivors, like my brother, will come back. Not necessarily through this door, but through Ghana as a gateway to West Africa. You're welcome. You are welcome.
He met it here also.
Oh, okay, good luck. Huh?
So I've really returned.
You have really returned.
If the Bible was nothing but a book of myths, talking about people who never lived and events that never occurred, places that never existed, there'd be no such thing as biblical archaeology, because there would be nothing found that correlated with the Bible's stories. But in fact, the opposite is the case. And so we just keep digging, we keep finding things. Oh, this relates to the Bible this way. The Bible suggests there was a city over here, let's dig. Oh, there it is. And so there's this correlation and this mutual illumination, the Bible shedding light on the archaeologist's work shedding light on the Bible, and it's that mutual clarification and illumination that gives me a lot of confidence that these stories, these narratives in the Bible are not just a bunch of fairy tales, but are talking about real people, real places, and real events.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up out of wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up out of your sleep, wake up, wake up.
What we gonna do right here is go back. Way back into time.
In the beginning, God created the universe and a planet called Earth. Humans were formed in God's image to continue God's work. But soon, humans decided we want to live our way, not God's. Selfishness and violence filled the world, so God started over with just one family. And God made a covenant with a man named Abraham. The land around you is now yours. Your family will be my blessing to the entire world. In just a few generations, they grew into a large nation named Israel.
Abraham married Sarah and fathered Ishmael with Hagar, his wife's maid, then Isaac with his wife Sarah. Rebekah married Isaac, the son of Abraham. Their sons are Jacob and Esau. Let's recap. Abraham married Sarah and fathered Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah and fathered Jacob.
After Jacob stole his brother's inheritance, he was scared. He ran away and went to live with his uncle Laban in Haran. Laban tricked Jacob into marrying his daughter Leah, but eventually gave him his other daughter, Rachel, who Jacob wanted to marry all along. Jacob got richer, and his family got larger. As time came for Jacob to leave his uncle's land, he took all his family and belongings and started to travel. Jacob's travels took him close to the land of his brother Esau. Though it had been years since he had seen Esau, he was still very afraid. Jacob sent his servants ahead to let his brother know he was coming in peace. Esau came with 400 men, and that terrified Jacob. Jacob prepared some gifts to send ahead to his brother. He also asked Leah and her children to go ahead while he followed. Jacob was still very scared and decided to spend the night alone while he was preparing and waiting to meet his brother Esau. That night, as he was alone, Jacob saw a figure emerge from the dark. His fears gripped him. Could this be Esau? Was Esau now trying to murder him in this lonely wilderness in the dark of night? Jacob was not going to let himself be harmed, so he decided to go on the attack. He rushed toward the man, knocking him to the ground. He was determined to find out who this man was. He would wrestle this man as if his life depended upon it. The fight began. It was an even match, and they wrestled for hours. Neither man could defeat the other. As the fight wore on, Jacob realized that he was not fighting with Esau. In fact, he wasn't sure who this stranger was, but he knew that this wasn't an ordinary man. The light began to break, and the stranger asked Jacob to let him go, but Jacob refused and wanted to know the stranger's name. Finally, to end the fight, the stranger simply touched Jacob's hip socket. Immediately, Jacob felt his leg weaken as his hip shifted out of joint. Even though he tried to wrestle, he knew that he couldn't win. "Now, let me go," the man said to Jacob. "It's morning." But Jacob knew that this was no ordinary man. This was a messenger of God. In spite of his pain, Jacob had a hold of him. "I won't let you go unless you bless me," Jacob said. "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob." Then the man blessed him. "Your name is now Israel. You have fought with God and men, and you were victorious." Something very special had just happened to Jacob. The sun rose gently in the sky as Jacob returned to see his family and face Esau. Jacob was a changed man. He walked with a limp, but he had a new name, a new identity. God had given Jacob a promise, and he would keep it.
Chapter 32. Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaketh." And he said, "I will not let thee go, except thou bless me." And he said unto him, "What is thy name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed."
The Holy Land was divided among the 12 tribes of Israel, which are the descendants of the 12 sons of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the grandson of Abraham. After the Egyptian bondage and the years spent in the wilderness, the Israelites went back to the Holy Land and conquered it. The land of Israel was then divided to the 12 tribes. Reuben lost his rights as firstborn, as he had defiled his father's bed. His inheritance was divided between the 2 sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and they became tribes. The Levites did not receive any land, as they were the priesthood of the nation of Israel. 48 cities scattered around Israel and located within the territories of the other tribes were allotted to them.
The Song of Solomon. Chapter 1. I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. Look not upon me because I am black. Look not upon me because I am black, but comely. I am black, but comely. I am black, but comely.
In the year 70 AD, the siege of Jerusalem would occur, which became the decisive event of the First Jewish-Roman War. Led by Titus, the future emperor of the Roman Empire, the Roman army attacked and successfully conquered the city of Jerusalem. Prior to this, the Jewish people had occupied Jerusalem since 66 AD. Some witness accounts claim that Titus didn't intend to destroy the temple. Apparently, his men became tired and angry and decided to destroy the temple against his will. According to reports, over 1 million people were killed during the siege, and another 97,000 were captured or enslaved. According to reports, over 1 million people were killed during the siege, and another 97,000 were captured or enslaved.
Chapter 24. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day.
Yes. You can see the corner. You can see the corner of the southern and the western wall. But what is important for me that you will see, look down there. Can you see the stones? It looks like someone destroyed something. This is an evidence for the destruction of the temple at 70 AD. And the street there that you see is from the time of King Herod. And in that case, we are standing on the 21st street, but this is down there, the street from the time of King Herod, and you can see a little bit of the Dome of the Rock. Can you see it?
So our descendants started to migrate from Judah. From Judah, then we came to Egypt. And it is in the Bible. That's why I came with this. This is a Bible. This is not something that I've written it. This is the original African Heritage Study Bible. You can take the task to buy from anywhere and then you read it. Then you know what I'm saying. So we came to Egypt with the pyramids and all those things. And then the Greeks, Alexander the Great, like the white people talk about that they are the learned people. When Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all those great men you think of the world came to study from us in Greek, and they saw our power, then they wanted to destroy us. So we have to move with our kings because we have now respect for our kings to protect them. So if you kill our king, it means you have killed the snake by cutting the head. Then we decided that, okay, if we should stay here for these people, that is Alexander the Great, and those people, they have studied to know our secret. Instead of giving us the glory, they rather want to destroy us. So let's go with our kings from this place to protect them. Then we moved from there. That is how we migrated from Judah to Egypt, to South Sudan, to come to the Middle Empire, to where we are now in Ghana. So in short, we the Ashantis, this is our origin.
His body also was like a beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, the voice of his word like the voice of a multitude. The Revelation of St. John the Divine. Chapter 1. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai. Okay, this is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
I'm black but comely. I'm black but comely.
If someone asked you who the richest people in history were, who would you name? Perhaps a billionaire banker or corporate mogul like Bill Gates or John D. Rockefeller. How about African King Musa Kita I? Ruling the Mali Empire in the 14th century CE, Mansa Musa, or the King of Kings, amassed a fortune that possibly made him one of the wealthiest people who ever lived. But his vast wealth was only one piece of his rich legacy. When Mansa Musa came to power in 1312, much of Europe was racked by famine and civil wars. But many African kingdoms and the Islamic world were flourishing, and Mansa Musa played a great role in bringing the fruits of this flourishing to his own realm. By strategically annexing the city of Timbuktu and re-establishing power over the city of Galle, he gained control over important trade routes between the Mediterranean and the West African coast, continuing a period of expansion which dramatically increased Mali's size. The territory of the Mali Empire was rich in natural resources, such as gold and salt. The world first witnessed the extent of Mansa Musa's wealth in 1324, when he took his pilgrimage to Mecca. Not one to travel on a budget, he brought a caravan stretching as far as the eye could see. Accounts of this journey are mostly based on an oral testimony and differing written records, so it's difficult to determine the exact details. But what most agree on is the extravagant scale of the excursion. Chroniclers describe an entourage of tens of thousands of soldiers, civilians, and slaves, 500 heralds, bearing gold staffs and dressed in fine silks, and many camels and horses bearing an abundance of gold bars. Stopping in cities such as Cairo, Mansa Musa is said to have spent massive quantities of gold, giving to the poor, buying souvenirs, and even having mosques built along the way. In fact, his spending may have destabilized the regional economy, causing mass inflation. This journey reportedly took over a year, and by the time Mansa Musa returned, tales of his amazing wealth had spread to the ports of the Mediterranean. Mali and its king were elevated to near legendary status, cemented by their inclusion on the 1375 Catalan Atlas. One of the most important world maps of medieval Europe, it depicted the king holding a scepter and a gleaming gold nugget. Mansa Musa had literally put his empire and himself on the map. But material riches weren't the king's only concern. As a devout Muslim, he took a particular interest in Timbuktu, already a center of religion and learning prior to its annexation. Upon returning from his pilgrimage, he had the great Djinguereber Mosque built there with the help of an Andalusian architect. He also established a major university, further elevating the city's reputation and attracting scholars and students from all over the Islamic world. Under Mansa Musa, the empire became urbanized, with schools and mosques in hundreds of densely populated towns. The king's rich legacy persisted for generations, and to this day, there are mausoleums, libraries, and mosques that stand as a testament to this golden age of Mali's history.
Nigerian terracottas, 2,000 years old. The magnificent bronzes of Ife and Benin. African civilization has ancient roots and a history that goes back long before Europeans arrived in the 15th century. Africa gave birth to a number of states and empires, especially along the coastal plains of the east and in the west south of the Sahara. Archaeology shows that in West Africa, in the savanna countries south of the Sahara, iron was in use from about 400 BC on. During the next 1,000 years, iron production spread throughout the continent. Following the introduction of iron, West African trade expanded, and a succession of states and urban centers rose and fell. Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Hausa, and Kanem-Borno. Commerce in the area increased dramatically after about AD 1000, buttressed by the well-defined trade routes across the Sahara Desert. One of the most important towns at the southern end of this network was Timbuktu, in the Kingdom of Mali. Timbuktu was a university town as well as a trading center. Learning and ideas were so important, in fact, that her merchants made more money from trade in books than they did from anything else. By AD 1000, Islam controlled all of North Africa and the states bordering the southern Sahara. Mali was just one state that benefited from its links with Islam. In 1324, its sultan, Mansa Musa, went on an ostentatious pilgrimage to Mecca, showering gold about him. Mansa's journey appears on this 1375 map made in Christian Majorca. A little to the south, the 14th century saw the rise of Benin, one of Africa's most powerful kingdoms. The bronzes produced at Benin, like this 16th century head of a queen mother, are outstanding. 3 centuries earlier, a little to the north, the sculptors of Ife had cast this head of a young man. Both works are a remarkable testament to the artists who produced them. The Benis of Benin had no written language. Descriptions of their advanced society can be found in the journals of early explorers. They left these bronze plaques as a vivid memorial to their lifestyle. Their king ruled as an absolute monarch, capable of mobilizing 100,000 men on a day's notice. He sent representatives to the Portuguese court. His merchants were the shrewdest of businessmen. The Portuguese and the Dutch were full of admiration for what they saw. To please these early European visitors, the artists of Benin produced masterpieces in ivory, like this 15th century carving. It depicts the sailors and merchants to whom it was designed to appeal. Produced in large numbers, this carving would have cost about as much as a good shirt. The Europeans who bought these earliest souvenirs cleared the way for the start of the slave trade. Gradually, this unnatural commerce destroyed the social and economic framework of Benin. The African kings responded to the decline of their kingdoms in the only way they knew how, conducting more and more human sacrifices. When a British force arrived in Benin City in 1897, they found it deserted and littered with the decaying remains of human sacrificial victims.
Chapter 19. And say, Hear ye the word of the Lord, O kings of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Behold, I will bring evil upon this place, the which whosoever heareth, his ears shall tingle. Because they have forsaken me, and have estranged this place, and have burned incense in it unto other gods, whom neither they nor their fathers have known, nor the kings of Judah, and have filled this place with the blood of innocents, they have built also the high places of Baal, to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings unto Baal, which I commanded not, nor spake it, neither came it into my mind. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that this place shall no more be called Tophet, nor the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. And I will make void the counsel of Judah and Jerusalem in this place, and I will cause them to fall by the sword before their enemies, and by the hands of them that seek their lives. And their carcasses will I give to be meat for the fowls of the heaven, and for the beasts of the earth. And I will make this city desolate, and an hissing. Every one that passeth thereby shall be astonished and hiss, because of all the plagues thereof.
The moment believers feel a spirit entering their body, in a trance, reaching a sacred state. This former slave trading post hosts Benin's annual Voodoo Festival.
Tout Africain est né vaudou.
Every African is born voodoo. That is why our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents were taken into slavery.
Tout Africain est né vaudou.
Every African is born voodoo. That is why our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents were taken into slavery.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Chapter 30. Now go, write it before them in a table, and note it in a book, that it may be for the time to come, forever and ever. That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Lord, which say to the seers, See not, and to the prophets, Prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits. Get you out of the way, turn aside out of the path, cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. Wherefore, thus saith the Holy One of Israel, because ye despise this word, and trust in oppression and perverseness, and stay thereon, therefore this iniquity shall be to you as a breach ready to fall, swelling out in a high wall, whose breaking cometh suddenly at an instant.
Tout Africain est né vaudou.
Every African is born voodoo. That is why our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents were taken into slavery.
Chapter 12. The word of the Lord also came unto me, saying, Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house, which have eyes to see and see not. They have ears to hear and hear not, for they are a rebellious house. Chapter 5. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation, it is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandest what they say. Their quiver is as an open sepulchre, they are all mighty men. And they shall eat up thine harvest and thy bread, which thy sons and thy daughters should eat. They shall eat up thy flocks and thine herds, they shall eat up thy vines and thy fig trees, they shall impoverish thy fenced cities, wherein thou trustedst, with the sword.
Hold! Form battle square. Take up action stations. Down! Down! Down!
Chapter 5. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation, it is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandest what they say. Their quiver is as an open sepulchre, they are all mighty men. And they shall eat up thine harvest and thy bread, which thy sons and thy daughters should eat. They shall eat up thy flocks and thine herds, they shall eat up thy vines and thy fig trees, they shall impoverish thy fenced cities, wherein thou trustedst, with the sword.
Tout Africain est né vaudou.
Every African is born voodoo. That is why our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents were taken into slavery.
Chapter 5. Therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge.
Our story begins in the rich and colorful community life of West Africa several hundred years ago. In the 15th and 16th centuries, the Yorubas of West Africa were among the most culturally advanced peoples on the continent. Batik was one of the earliest practice arts. Woven cloth came from Mali to the north, and decorative jewelry was finely worked in brass, silver, and gold. Some of the world's finest bronze sculpture was created at Ife. Pottery and baskets were decorated according to local customs and could be so identified. Musicians made their own instruments and were among the elite of the villages. A person of great importance and influence was the griot. He was a storyteller, the traveling troubadour. But more than that, he was the recorder of history, the authority who went from village to village carrying the news. Here, at this Yoruba wedding ceremony, he passes on his stories, and the people, for emphasis, repeat the principal facts. This is the origin of the call and response, which echoes down through history and is a big influence even on today's modern music. In this Yoruba story, the griot warns the people of a coming danger, slavery. Torn from their families, taken from their homes, left with only their bodies, their minds, and the echo of what they were. Taken in chains to the coast, they were inhumanly packed into the cramped holds of slave ships.
Chapter 28. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, Would God it were even. And at even thou shalt say, Would God it were morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
Tout Africain est né vaudou.
Every African is born voodoo. That is why our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents were taken into slavery.
Tout Africain est né vaudou.
Every African is born voodoo. That is why our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents were taken into slavery.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
Hath a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which doth not profit. Be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid. Be ye very desolate, saith the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water. Is Israel a servant? Is he a home-born slave? Why is he spoiled? The young lions roared upon him and yelled, and they made his land waste. His cities are burned without inhabitant.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
For me, well, I've got kind of mixed heritage. My mum's from Nigeria and my dad was born in Jamaica, but my mum is quite fair. She's like really, really light skinned. So I think there might be like a throwback European gene in there somewhere. So I'm gonna say like, maybe just to mix up a little bit, like 10% European somewhere.
Sub-Saharan African, 97.6%.
Yeah, well, I thought so. Quite a big percentage.
And that is 72.2% Nigerian.
Oh, okay, so that's quite a lot.
And then 8.2% Congolese.
That makes sense actually, thinking about that. Because my dad's from Jamaica, but he's quite dark. He's like Wesley Snipes, quite dark levels. And if you see him, he does look like very, very sort of like Central African. I'm not too surprised by that.
Is he going to be surprised about that?
He's got to be surprised, 100%. Can't wait to tell him.
Yeah. 6.2% Coastal West African. 0.4% Southern East African.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And then 0.1% African hunter-gatherer.
What does that mean?
Okay.
And then your possible European throwback gene, you have 2.4% European.
Ah, there we go.
Which is 1.1% British and Irish. You most likely had a third, fourth, fifth, or sixth great-grandparent who was 100% British or Irish. This person was likely born between 1750 and 1840. And then your sort of DNA relatives online, they are 102% more likely to feel jittery after drinking caffeine.
Yes, 100%, yeah. I can't have, as you guys know, I don't drink tea or coffee.
52% more likely to have a perfect pitch.
It's where you can so you could sing like a C note.
Really?
So
Give us a note. Get this guy in X Factor next year, definitely.
Yeah, man.
On your father's side, going way, way back, you have a distant relative, and this is a sort of 73,000-year-old relative, with Pharaoh Ramesses III.
Oh, really? Hey,
That's well
some
cool.
like Egyptian.
So your great-grandfather, 73,000 years, is also his great-grandfather.
Oh my days, okay, there
It
you
like
go.
meets at that point.
So I'm related to royalty almost.
In a way.
In a way, yeah. way, way back, but yeah, I can kind of say that.
Don't let it go to your head.
This is way more interesting than your Scandi
Yeah,
stuff.
farmer. You're farmer, I'm a pharaoh. My mum's from Nigeria and my dad was born in Jamaica, but my mum is quite fair. She's like really, really light skinned. So I think there might be like a throwback European gene in there somewhere. So I'm gonna say like, maybe just to mix up a little bit, like 10% European somewhere.
On your father's side, going way, way back, you have a distant relative, and this is a sort of 73,000-year-old relative, with Pharaoh Ramesses III.
Oh, really? Hey,
That's well
some
cool.
like Egyptian.
So your great-grandfather, 73,000 years, is also his great-grandfather.
Oh my days, okay, there
It
you
like
go.
meets at that point.
So I'm related to royalty almost.
In a way.
In a way, yeah. way, way back, but yeah, I can kind of say that.
Don't let it go to your head.
This is way more interesting than your Scandi
Yeah,
stuff.
farmer. You're farmer, I'm a pharaoh.
And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord God shall slay thee, and call his servants by another name. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord God shall slay thee, and call his servants by another name.
So you'll work hard. And all you have to do is tell me your name.
I'm Kunta Kinte.
Son of a... Your name is Toby. Now tell me your name.
I'm Kunta Kinte.
That's not your name. Toby's your name. Now, what is your name?
Say it. Kunta Kinte.
Toby's your name. Now, I'll ask you again. Tell me your name. Say it! Say it! Say it! Toby!
Say it. Kunta Kinte.
Toby! It's Toby! Now say it! Toby! Damn you!
Please!
Black liquor bastard. You will not move from here till you say your name. Not if night falls or a new day comes. Now you will say Toby. Say it. Say it! Say it! Say it!
Moro, I hurt my boy.
Please. I'm here.
No, Benta. I can't see our boy. I've looked for him everywhere. He isn't coming home. Say it! Say it! Say it! Say it! Say your name. Your owner's wife chose for you. Say your name, so you know this ain't Africa. This is Virginia, and you're the property of John Waller, like the horses and hogs, nothing more. Say your name, so you know what you are. Say it. Say it. Say it! Say it! Say your name! Say it! Say Toby! Tell me your name! Say it, damn you! Say Toby! Just say your name!
He said it. He said it.
Say it again. Louder. What's your name? What's your name?
Toby. He said it. That's what I said. Toby. Give me that grease inside here.
Go home now.
And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord God shall slay thee, and call his servants by another name. And God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage, and entreat them evil 400 years. And the nation to whom they shall be in bondage will I judge, said God. And after that shall they come forth and serve me in this place.
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish that you are?
I didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
if
all right.
a Chinese person were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name, a European name, or the name that has a Caucasian or white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch or Powell, I think it would be just as improper for a black person or the so-called Negro in this country, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to walk around with these names. And therefore he teaches us that during slavery, the same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property. So that when you see a Negro today who's named Johnson, if you go back in his history, you'll find that he was once, his grandfather or one of his forefathers was owned by a white man who was named Johnson. If his name is Bunch, his grandfather was owned by a white man that was named Bunch.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
My father didn't know his last name. My father got his last name from his grandfather, and his grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed during slavery.
Was there any line, any point in the genealogy of your family when you did have to use the last name, and if so, what was it?
The last name of my forefathers was taken from them when they were brought to America and made slaves. And then the name of the slave master was given, which we refuse. We reject that name today.
You mean you won't even tell me what your father's supposed last name was or gifted last name was?
I never acknowledge it whatsoever.
Chapter 28. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other.
They dance to the beat of the African drum, deep in the forest, mimicking a disappearing species that they've grown to love, the Asiatic lion. They're part of the 20,000 Siddhis, an ethnic group of African descent who live in Gujarat, Western India. Though far removed from their ancestral lands, the Siddhis have cherished their culture. Now it's a source of income for them.
कहीं होटल होता है, पहले हमने 1500 से स्टार्ट किया, तो इसमें से रोज का 2-3 सीजन होता है तो 6 प्रोग्राम रहता है, तो उसमें 1 आवर का खेल रहता है.
Imran is a Siddhi, a descendant of the Bantu people from southeast Africa. He believes his ancestors originally came from Uganda. Now he lives in a small village called Jambor with his mother and grandmother. The village is surrounded by the forest of Gir, the last bastion of the world's 500 remaining Asiatic lions. Centuries ago, Africans from Ethiopia, Eritrea and Somalia sailed to the Indian subcontinent as merchants, while others were brought as slaves, while others were brought as slaves, while others were brought as slaves. The Siddhis say they were an elite group of slaves serving the ruling class only. Because of their loyalty and military skills, they were favoured by India's Nawabs or Muslim rulers, and the Mughals, a Muslim imperial power in the early 16th century. The Siddhis rose to positions of power, serving as kings themselves over princely Siddhi states, a little-known fact around the world. Ambassador Saeed Akbaruddin, India's representative to the United Nations, says the Siddhis form an important part of India's history.
These were a very small minority. Look at what they've accomplished for themselves and for Indian society. They rose to be noblemen, they rose to be commanders, soldiers, admirals.
Over time, most integrated fully with the local population, choosing partners of Indian heritage. To preserve their African identity, some isolated themselves, creating small villages in various parts of Gujarat. Curator and historian at the Schoenberg Center in New York, Sylviane Diouf, who's tracked the Siddhi people's journey from the African coast to the Indian subcontinent, explains the roots of the Siddhis currently residing in Gir.
The Siddhi today are the descendants of the 1800s people, as well as some Africans who arrived actually later.
Among them were Imran's ancestors, who were brought to India in the 19th century.
और जो जूनागढ़ का जो नवाब था वो लाया हुआ था, किसी को बॉडी करके ले लाया था, कोई ऐसा कोई जिसे पटरी है, ट्रेन का पटरी, तो उनको उठाने के लिए कोई इंडियन का कोई काम नहीं है कि उठा सके. तो हमारे लोग जो जैसे मजबूत होते हैं, स्ट्रॉन्ग के लिए वो उठाना जरूरी है, तो वो लोग भी इसमें भी आए थे, कोई लोग बॉडीगार्ड के लिए आए थे, इसलिए यहाँ पे लाए हुए हैं.
With the passage of time, some escaped slavery, establishing communities in forested areas. But today, life for thousands of Siddis, such as Imran, is far from glamorous. Most live on the fringes of society, in abject poverty. They listened, and today Imran and his friends support themselves by performing African dances spiked with a bit of drama for visitors. And when he's not dancing, he works in Gir Forest as a guide.
कॉलेज जाता है तो कोई जॉब मिल जाता है, फॉरेस्ट में मिल जाता है, आर्मी वगैरह में मिल जाते हैं, तो थोड़े बहुत वैसे हो जाते हैं, तो मक्कन अपने आप कर लेते हैं.
Besides their strength, the Siddis say that the Nawabs also believed that they held a special relationship with the Asiatic lions and to nature itself.
जैसे हम लोगों को पता रहता है कि लायन कब डेंजर में होता है, उसका हाव कैसा है, वो सब देखना पड़ता है कि जहाँ जहाँ हम लोग हैं वहाँ लायन है ही, मगर उसको क्या है कि हम लोग परेशान नहीं करते कि हम लोगों का जो परिवार है उसको परेशान नहीं करता, घर जैसा माहौल रहता है वो.
Since the 1950s, the Indian government has supported the Siddis of Gujarat through an affirmative action initiative, recognizing them as a special tribe and granting them individual rights. They've also made it possible for them to draw benefit payments directly out of bank accounts.
They have access to education in a preferential manner. They also have access to jobs in a preferential manner.
But Imran says that accessing this aid is sometimes challenging. And Imran has another concern. Gujarat's Asiatic lion population is threatened by increased overcrowding and competition for space among both animals and humans, and he calls for effective efforts to conserve the species.
पहली बात तो है कि अगर यहाँ से लायन जाता है तो यहाँ के लोकल लोगों को तो तकलीफ पड़ेगी ही, मगर ये लायन अगर उधर जाएगा तो उसको वो भी मर जाएगा.
The Siddis want to stay here, living with the lions side by side. And when asked about their country of origin, they say, without any hesitation,
फिर भी अपना देश हिंदुस्तान है, इधर ही जीना और इधर ही मरना.
El único gangá que hay en Cuba es el gangá de Mogoba, una etnia descendiente de África. this one I am a fumble because the language where they talk, itself don't talk.
Ai mapinga o mdinga ti atendu ena. Hello ta ngala ngaba shanga lo na wema. Mdinga.
Y saber ya de dónde desciende uno, de dónde viene y cómo viene, eso es divino.
No other people in this part of the world used to practice such cultural activities. So, the history our grandfathers and our fathers were telling us has come true. That our people has been taken into slavery and some of them are still existing.
Mi cuerpo está en Cuba, pero mi alma está en África. Y gracias a esa alma que está en África es que se nutre este cuerpo aquí en Cuba.
Mati papati. No fofu kino kem pequena anko just you know walas. Iki bobi kamane apata fuyani me. Onti. Mati papati.
We actually are children of slaves. We came from Africa. We are mostly of the Ashanti tribe, the Karamanti tribe, Igbos, and such like. But we banded together and fought the British and won the war.
Haiti is always described as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. But during its height as Saint-Domingue, it was the richest place in the Americas. The thing about it, though, is that its richness was all rooted in slaves. Its wealth was based on human capital, on owning that human capital.
The dominion of the master had to be absolute, but that absoluteness itself made the master into something other than human as well.
Liberty, equality, fraternity, that was new for the world. The Haitian Revolution is probably the most profound revolution ever realized by human beings. The only place where slaves created a nation. But nobody wants to talk about it.
In the summer of 1789, it was France that grabbed the world's attention. Parisian mobs rioted against the French king and against their own desperate poverty. Chanting slogans for liberty, equality, and brotherhood, they sparked a revolution that would fill history books for centuries to come. In the streets of Paris, the French Revolution meant an end to the appalling privileges of wealth. And France's brand new Congress, called the National Assembly, it meant the ideas of Europe's most radical thinkers could be realized.
Nobody knows exactly what's going to come out of it, but just the idea of having rights, right? The idea that all people have rights, that those rights are inherent. This was something that obviously philosophers had written about before, but during the course of the French Revolution, it was written down in a text called the Declaration of the Rights of Man.
It's a dangerous idea because the society is based on inequality. That's what makes it work, because it was not supposed to work for everybody. It was supposed to work for a
Haiti and the
minority.
Dominican Republic are close, but only in the geographical sense. The two countries may exist on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola, but historically they have rarely seen eye to eye. Tensions due to controversial law changes and the recent hanging of a Haitian man in the Dominican Republic have experts worried that the island is on the brink of a humanitarian crisis. So why do Haiti and the Dominican Republic hate each other? Well, to understand the conflict, we have to go back to 1697, when France and Spain divided Hispaniola in two after battling for control. Haiti gained independence from France in 1804 and subsequently took over the Spanish Dominican side in an effort to free the entire island of slavery. Haiti occupied the Dominican side for 22 years. During that time, the Spanish-speaking Dominicans were restricted to speaking French, and Haitians enforced oppressive rules on labor and the redistribution of Dominican wealth. Although the Dominican Republic eventually gained its independence from Haiti, it's thought that this period of occupation was where their relationship started to sour. Since then, several social and economic factors have contributed to deepening divisions. Today, tensions are largely motivated by racism. Human rights experts observe that Dominicans openly discriminate against Haitians because they perceive them to be more black, despite both cultures having African ancestry. Dominicans argue that they have more European heritage than their Haitian neighbors. This anti-Haitian sentiment has endured since 1937, when dictator Rafael Trujillo led the Dominican Republic. Rafael was obsessed with pale skin, and under his rule, around 10 to 25,000 dark-skinned Haitians living in Dominican border towns were murdered. Economically, the Dominican Republic fares better than Haiti. Experts suggest that this disparity comes down to the way Hispaniola is divided. While the Dominican Republic enjoys plentiful rains, the mountains that border the two nations cut off Haiti's rainfall. The semi-arid climate, coupled with deforestation problems, has meant Haiti's agricultural production is more restricted than the Dominican Republic's. All that being said, when the 2010 earthquake devastated Haiti, the Dominican Republic was quick to jump to its aid, providing food, water, and rescue workers. Sadly, this feeling of goodwill didn't last. So what went wrong?
Brazil was the main destination for enslaved Africans. This area, Cais do Valongo, used to be the port where people brought as slaves from Africa. According to the estimates, something like 500,000 Africans were brought to Brazil through this port. Some estimates go up to 2 million, but maybe they're not so realistic. We could say something from 500,000 to maybe 1 million, which is enough. This area was discovered by accident. They were building a new road when they found the objects, remnants of people who had passed here, just arriving from Africa. This place we are now is the Suspended Gardens of Valongo. This area was used to be a marketplace for slaves. There was a house here, Casa de Engorda. It means the house for getting fat, because of course they were weak due to crossing the Atlantic and those slave ships. They would come here to get fatter, so they could be sold at best prices here. This is the monument to Zumbi dos Palmares, Zumbi of Palmares, the leader of the largest, the most important Maroon community that we had in Brazil. We had thousands of them around the country, places where runaway slaves get together to create their own places to live inside the Portuguese colony of Brazil at that time. So the first contact of the Portuguese colonial army with Palmares happened in 1604, and Palmares was defeated in 1694. Zumbi was killed 1 year later, 1695, and that day, November 20th, is considered to be the day of black awareness.
Hosea, chapter 1. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God.
In the 18th century, British merchants shipped around 3 million people from West Africa across the Atlantic to the Americas and sold them into slavery. They made £4 trillion from the unpaid labour alone. Portugal and Holland pioneered this slave route. Britain made a national fortune from it. Much of the Britain we know today was built with slave money. Ports, cities and canals. Even the Church of England has admitted making money from the slave business. By the 19th century, a fifth of the British elite had made their fortunes from slavery. Among them, David Cameron's distant cousin, General Sir James Duff. The Liverpool merchants who founded what's now Barclays Bank were slave traders. In 1833, when slavery was abolished, slave owners were paid £20 million in compensation for their loss of property. That's £2 billion today. More than 10 million people died as a direct result of the Atlantic slave trade, but the survivors got nothing. West Africa, nothing. Now 15 Caribbean states, including Jamaica, have launched the first united campaign for reparations from Britain, France and Holland. They have suggested compensation equal to the sum offered to slave owners in the 1830s, £2 billion. They also want an apology, recognition of the historic atrocity.
They hid in caves. My great-grandmother was born in a cave to make sure that she was not born as a slave. And that is what Britain perpetuated.
But the British government has refused to give either. David Cameron's first official visit to Jamaica has amplified calls on Britain to agree to reparations. Some argue that if Britain did pay, it wouldn't be the elite footing the bill but the tax-paying working classes. Others have said this was 200 years ago, it's in the past, why should I pay now? In Jamaica, slavery was followed with a century of colonialism.
Most of the land is still in the hands of Europeans.
When the Brits left in 1962, 80% of the population were functionally illiterate. Male literacy remains 4 points below the global average. 19% of the country live in poverty. When historic crimes have generational victims, who should pay?
Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich.
David and Nikki Farquharson own a nearby sugar plantation, which has been in their family for hundreds of years.
Can you tell me, were you told about the brutality of slavery as a child?
No, I went to school in the UK at 7. So, most of what I've learned, the history of Jamaica, has been in the UK.
Okay.
And then coming back here. I came back in 1990, and basically read, listened.
But what about in terms of the actual brutality that took place? I understand, like, in terms of slavery in general, but actually, specifically, the brutality that took place.
You mean what sort of things went on?
No. Not what went on, but is that something that you've actually learned about?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's pretty well documented. I think people know. I mean, it was a. You've got a system where a small number of people are controlling and keeping in subjugation a large number of people, forcing them to work. The rules that basically a slave owner could do practically anything.
Who do you think was responsible for the brutality that took place?
Who was responsible?
Yeah.
You mean who actually carried it out?
Yeah. Who was responsible for?
Or the slave owners, the state, the judges. But it was a societal thing here. It's a set-up society.
As a descendant of people who profited from the brutality of slavery, and as somebody that still reaps the benefits today, how do you feel about that?
That's a very loaded question. Everyone benefits, or there are good things and bad things about anyone's existence. I'm the product of my parents and their families and a society, as you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think do I feel guilty about my involvement in slavery or my benefit in slavery? No.
If I was somebody that woke up every day in a beautiful house and was born into wealth and lived in, the middle of paradise, and I knew that the only reason that I was able to live that type of a life was because my ancestors had tortured, raped, stole, you know, a set of people, I personally couldn't live comfortably with knowing that, you know, those factors, especially if I wasn't doing something to sort of make amends of what had taken place.
Are you? Yeah, I try to live my life. Well, it's a very it's a very peculiar thing. I don't carry a cross, no. So I don't, and I don't feel as though I should be going out, and I'm not making atonement for anything. I'm trying to live my life as a Jamaican. Life in 1700s was a bit more brutal generally, everywhere than it is now.
Obviously, the way of life then and the way of life now, there's a lot of differences. But as far as I'm concerned, or I can see, you know, when I read or see, you know, pictures or actually see, you know, the shackles that people were held in and the things that they were used to punish them, like human cages that they were hung in, etc., etc., or reading stories about the fact that they were boiled in baths of boiling sugar, or had their legs tied from two trees and, you know, the trees let go and ripped apart. To me, that's not something that affects me because I've got such high morals. You know, whether that happened at the beginning of time or at the end of time, to me, that's something that...
So why does it affect you?
What do you mean?
Well, you say it doesn't affect you. It isn't affecting you because you've got higher moral values.
All right, it's not something...
How does it? It affects you,
Yeah, it definitely affects me because I know that it's something that happened to part of my ancestors at the end of the day. That's not something I can just, you know, feel comfortable about.
The evil of slavery, to my mind, is an economic system which basically exploited not one individual within the same group. It's the whole, I suppose, the theological, the societal idea of let's exploit another group, and that's one of the problems that within this society you can define, or you can choose to define goodness or badness based upon the color of your skin.
If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints.
And the rest of you.
He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity.
Is that how you serve the Lord, you lazy slut?
No, please. I just need to drink something.
Is that so? Okay. I'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Stop. You think I'm waiting on you? If even one drop is missing by this evening, I'll make you regret it. And keep that bucket next to you at all times. What are you cows staring at?
He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Chapter 14. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, after the glory hath he sent me unto the nations which spoiled you. For he that toucheth you toucheth the apple of his eye. For behold, I will shake mine hand upon them, and they shall be a spoil to their servants, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion. For lo, I come, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith the Lord. And many nations shall be joined to the Lord in that day, and shall be my people, and I will dwell in the midst of thee. And thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto thee. And the Lord shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land, and shall choose Jerusalem again.
Who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants, and the giving of the law, and the service of God and the promises, whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Christ came, who is over all. God blessed forever. Amen. Not as though the word of God hath taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. Neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children. But in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. For this is the word of promise. At this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac, for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth, it was said unto her, The elder shall serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Can we keep all of the commandments? On multiple occasions, when someone finds out that I teach we should keep the commandments, they typically respond by saying that it is impossible to keep all of the commandments in the Bible. But is that true? Is it really impossible to keep all the commandments? What does the Bible say on this subject? In Exodus 16, God gave commandments about the collecting of manna for 6 days and resting on the Sabbath. And when some of the people ignored His instructions about not gathering manna on the Sabbath, God spoke these words. And the Lord said to Moses, How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Exodus 16:28. It seems that when God gave the commandments concerning the collection of manna on the Sabbath, He expected the people to obey. Look at what He says in another place. Oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me and always keep my commandments, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. Deuteronomy 5:29. Can you hear the longing He has for His people to obey Him? But some will say, the commandments are too difficult. I cannot possibly keep them all. Let me ask you a question. Do you keep all the laws in America or whatever country you live in? I know that in the United States there are more laws than anyone has ever been able to count. And thousands of new laws are added every year. As citizens of the United States, we are required to keep all the laws of our country. When you try to count all the laws, it seems like an impossible task to accomplish. Yet, the majority of Americans are considered law-abiding citizens. Do we not want to be a law-abiding citizen in the kingdom of God? Listen to what God says about it. Now, what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. Deuteronomy 30:11. So according to the Bible, the commandments of God are not too difficult or beyond our reach. This means that we should be able to keep His commandments. Let me submit to you that we can keep all of His commandments, but we might not be able to do all of them personally. I know that some of you are currently thinking only Yeshua kept all the commandments. However, listen to what the Bible says about Zacharias and Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. Luke 1:6. According to the Bible, the parents of John the Baptist were able to keep all the commandments of God perfectly. Let me also submit to you that although Yeshua kept all the commandments perfectly, he did not do all of the commandments personally. I know that sounds strange, but think about it. He was a man, so obviously he was not able to do certain commandments that only apply to women. For example, since he was not a woman, he did not have a monthly menstrual cycle. Therefore, he could not do the commandments that apply to women during their monthly cycle. However, he kept all the commandments perfectly. Just because you cannot do a commandment personally does not mean you cannot keep that commandment. The Hebrew word translated keep is the word shamar, and it means to keep, to guard, to observe, to give heed, to protect, to wait for, to retain, to treasure, to observe, and to celebrate. Obviously, there's more to keeping the commandments than simply making sure you check them off your to-do list. Keeping the commandments is about making them a treasure and protecting them, making sure that they are respected, holding them in high esteem, and not disobeying them. Some might say, since you cannot do them all, doesn't that mean you disobey some? Absolutely not. We are to do all the commandments that we are capable of doing, and guard them as one would take care of a valuable treasure. You would not throw away a treasure or let it be stolen. You would keep it safe. Anyone who says that we can disobey the commandments, he has not learned to treasure them. That person does not know how to keep the commandments. Remember that our Messiah said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." John 14:15. Many people estimate that there are around 600 commandments in the Torah. I've not counted them all, so I don't know for sure. However, not all of those commandments apply to every person. Many of those commandments are only for the priests and the Levites. Likewise, many are only to be done when there's a temple in Jerusalem, which there's not. Some only apply to kings, and others only apply to women. Some are for slaves, and others are for slave owners. A number of them only apply when you are living in the land of Israel, and some are only for those who own farmland and farm animals. If those scenarios do not apply to you personally, then you are not required to do them personally. However, you are still expected to keep those commandments. Let me give you an example from the life of Yeshua. As I said earlier, he kept all the commandments perfectly, but he did not do all of them personally. In John chapter 8, we see a very interesting situation take place. A woman who was supposedly caught in the act of adultery was brought to Yeshua to test him to see what he would do. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say?" This they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. John 8:4-6. What kind of test was this? They were testing him to see if he really knew the law, and if he would really keep the law. He was claiming to be the Messiah, and they were trying to trap him, to prove that he was a fraud or a false teacher. It was a very clever trap, but our Messiah had no difficulty knowing what to do to keep the law perfectly. Look at what the commandment says about those who are caught in adultery. "The adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death." Leviticus 20:10. Where was the man? They only brought a woman to Yeshua. They claimed that she was caught in the very act of adultery, which means the man was also caught in the act with her. Yet they failed to bring the man for judgment. To condemn the woman would have been a violation of the commandment. Both were necessary for this condemnation to be carried out. It's also important to note what he did next. He raised himself up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." John 8:7. After he said that, all of the accusers went away, and there were no witnesses left to accuse this woman. This is vital, because there must at least be 2 witnesses to a crime before a death sentence can be carried out. Whoever is deserving of death shall be put to death on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. He shall not be put to death on the testimony of 1 witness. Deuteronomy 17:6. If Yeshua would have had this woman stoned to death, he would have been guilty of breaking at least 2 commandments in the Torah. However, he kept the commandments perfectly, and righteous judgment was given that day. And Yeshua said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." John 8:11. It's important to note that he told her to stop sinning. He didn't give her permission to continue in her sin of adultery. He expected her to repent and stop sinning. I bring this story up because I have had several people say that if we want to keep all the commandments in the Torah, then we must stone people to death. However, we've already seen that Yeshua didn't do that, and he kept the Torah perfectly. Also, the qualifications for stoning are very specific. And if you don't meet all the qualifications, then you cannot stone anyone. If you do, then you are violating the commandments. There's a popular idea among many Christians that believe the Bible has ceremonial laws and moral laws. And they claim that the ceremonial laws were somehow abolished, but the moral laws are still active today. Let me be clear. The Bible never makes such a distinction. The Bible simply says, "Keep my commandments." At no point in the entire Bible does anyone ever say that a single commandment has been done away with. In fact, listen to the words of our Messiah. "Do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to make full. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law, till all is accomplished. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments, and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Matthew 5:17-19. According to our Savior, we should be doing and teaching the commandments. And heaven and earth will be destroyed before even a single dot is removed from the law. It's obvious that the Son of God wants to do what His Father commands. He did not come to abolish His Father's commandments. He came to abolish sin. Let me leave you with a sobering word of warning from our Messiah. "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name?' And I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.'" Matthew 7:21-23. According to the Messiah, there will be many who call Him Lord, but do not do the will of His Father in heaven. And He says those people practice lawlessness. This stands in striking contrast to what we just read in Matthew 5:19. "But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." I don't know about you, but I want to be called great in the kingdom, not least. And I certainly don't want to be called lawless. Popular Christianity says that we do not need to keep the commandments anymore, saying that the commandments have been abolished or nailed to the cross. But remember that many travel the wide road that leads to destruction. Just because something is popular does not make it true. Test everything according to the Scriptures so that you are not led astray by false teachers.
Imagine a society where everything you do, everything you say, and everything you buy is controlled and evaluated by the authorities. It's not science fiction. In China, it's a reality. From now on, citizens' lives are rated and assessed. This is what the Chinese Communist Party calls social credit.
The government here says it is trying to purify society by rewarding those who are trustworthy and punishing those who are not. So like the credit score that most Americans get for how they handle their finances, Chinese citizens are now getting social credit scores.
The social credit rating system began testing 5 years ago in approximately 30 Chinese cities. It will be rolled out across the entire country by 2020.
So now, the government is tracking citizens' behavior from smoking on a train to jaywalking. If one score drops low enough, they could be denied travel or buying an apartment.
When Leo Hu recently tried to book a flight, he was told he was banned from flying because he's on the list of untrustworthy people. Leo is a journalist who was ordered by a court to apologize for a series of tweets he wrote and was then told his apology was insincere. I can't buy property. My child can't go to private school, he says. You feel you're being controlled by the list all the time. And the list is now getting longer, as every Chinese citizen is being assigned a social credit score. Nearly 15 million people have already been prevented from traveling.
The process made possible thanks to the collection of masses of data in all areas of its citizens' private and public life.
To receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead.
China's
and that
growing
no man
network
might
of
buy
surveillance
or
cameras
sell
makes
save
all of
he
this
that had
possible.
the mark
The
or the
country
name of the
already has
beast
an
or the
estimated
number of his name.
176 million cameras.
This
Here is
shows
wisdom.
every person,
Let him
every
that hath
bike, every
understanding
car, every
count
bus.
the number of the beast.
It is an adult,
For it is the number of a man,
male or female,
and his
it can
number
recognize more than
is
4,000 vehicles.
603
For China's population, already scrutinized by the country's 117 million surveillance cameras, the social credit system only signals a further decline in freedom.
How far into people's daily mundane activities does this go?
Well, I think that the government and the people running the plan would like to go as deeply as possible to determine how to allocate benefits and also how to impact and shape their behavior.
In this building, the officials of Rongcheng assign a rating to its inhabitants. We were able to sneak inside and film discreetly for a few minutes. Here, the agents collect data provided by the police, courts, and tax office. Each resident is then given a rating from the letter D for not-so-good citizens to AAA for the best. This also applies to companies.
In several big cities in China, including here in Shanghai, the government is even tracking jaywalkers. Cameras record them going through intersections, zero in on their face, and then publicly shame them on nearby video screens. Police in Beijing have been wearing these glasses that can recognize faces linked to the government's national database to help boost arrests. How advanced is this technology?
This is cutting edge.
Wu Fei is CEO of a company that makes the glasses. He claims he doesn't know how the government intends to use his technology.
I have no idea.
Really?
Yes.
Do you trust the government the way they're using your technology?
Sorry, I can't answer this.
You can't answer that.
This is outside our scope of questions.
China plans to launch a digital mass surveillance systems are stirring concerns of privacy and government accountability across the globe.
He says how the new scoring system truly works is kept secret and could be easily abused by the government.
Many countries across the globe are experiencing a massive expansion in government surveillance powers, and the threats of global instability, terror and war are leaving increasingly less space for privacy and individual freedom in the post-industrial society.
Reward good citizens and punish bad people. Human rights activist Hu Jia is already blacklisted. Deprived of his passport for 10 years, his movements are limited. He says the social credit system will allow authorities to more easily punish those who do not pledge allegiance to the party.
In China, the people who will lose the most credit are those who do not agree with the Communist Party. We can't criticize society or the current system, nor should we say bad things about the highest levels of power and the leader. In fact, this social harmony desired by the party is said to maintain the stability of society, but it only serves to guarantee the monopoly of its power.
We're already moving very quickly, as you know, into a sort of surveillance society where lots of organizations of all types have lots of data about us. If we unify it all around one identity system, that hurdles us far faster and far further into a surveillance society.
So let's switch gears a little bit. So you have something else that's really interesting in the newsletter about people in Sweden putting implants, microchips, right, into them. We've seen something like this here. There was a company that
in Wisconsin,
right, so they could get stuff out of the vending machine with these microchips. So what's happening in Sweden?
So basically in Sweden over the past couple of years, several thousand people have had these little rice grain sized microchips put into their hands, which contain information that they can use to, say, check into the gym or get into the office or pay for train tickets. Right? On the one hand, everyone can appreciate that that's convenient, right? How many times have you been looking for your key fob at the gym or can't remember your password for something? But I think the bigger question here is, look, as the human body itself becomes a technological platform, right, there are big questions we need to consider about what kind of information is put out about us, from us, quite literally, and also further down the line, what kind of access do other people or platforms have to that information that is inside us, right? This is a biotech question, this kind of blurring of the lines between the human body and tech. I mean, it's one thing if you're holding your smartphone and it's sort of emitting data about you. It's another thing if your own hand is doing the same thing. You know, we'll see. This is 3,000 people. This is a small experiment. It's been developing over the past several years. But as the information that these microchips contains gets more elaborate and more detailed, people may start to change their mind.
This is not an animation. This isn't like the Fox football robot.
It looks like Star Wars to me, though.
Yeah, it's a little Terminator-esque, right? But this is the Atlas robot, and this thing can now go out for a jog.
Look at that backflip.
I mean, you've got to be in pretty good shape if you want to outrun that thing or outflip it. Pretty good. So Boston Dynamics robot can now jog, do flips, and open doors.
You know what's amazing?
Is it over for us? Are we done as a human race?
I'm pro-science. I am pro-technology. I can't think of the scenario where you need a robot to run.
Or do a backflip.
Well, it's just to show that it can. I don't think that's the function of the robot.
It's amazing what this robot could do a year ago. It's not even close to what it can do. So only imagine what it's going to be able to do a year from now.
This is how it starts. Like they learn. Mm-hmm.
We want robots. They'll take care of our kids someday.
Now, if that is a possibility for us,
the robot nanny.
The robot nanny. I'm all in.
New at 6, another futuristic innovation may be taking shape in a secret Silicon Valley site. An Amazon research facility in Sunnyvale reportedly has a secret mission involving robots.
To give you an idea of just how sensitive Amazon is about their lab, as we were shooting video on the public sidewalk, teams of security guards said we couldn't point our cameras at their property and called Sunnyvale police claiming we were trespassing.
Just so you know, he's filming audio and video too.
Awesome.
After consulting city zoning maps, Sunnyvale PD said it was indeed public property and allowed us to stay.
Cool, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bloomberg put out a report early this morning titled, Amazon has a top secret plan to build home robots. Citing unnamed sources, they say the project has been dubbed Vesta, after the Roman goddess of hearth, home, and family. There are a lot of unknowns. Will it talk? What will it look like? And what will it be able to do?
Chloe, am I ready on my washer cycle?
Remember Chloe from LG, the doomed home robot demo at the Consumer Electronics Show earlier this year? It went silent in front of a huge crowd.
Chloe, what's for dinner tonight?
It's a glaring example of how the technology is still in its early days.
We're becoming aware of how much data we give away without even realizing it. Our habits online can say a lot about our personalities, but when we're out and about, what does our behaviour in the real world say about us?
Well, in the UK, we're all getting used to the fact that we're being filmed by CCTV a lot of the time, but although a human can tell a lot about a person just by looking at video footage, that is a really hard job for a computer to do. That said, this system is having a pretty good guess at who it's looking at right now.
This kind of profiling of humans by computer systems has many uses, from this kind of anonymized retail analysis to other areas that might say more about us as people.
One of the more controversial uses for AI is in policing.
Peterlee Police Station in County Durham, the early hours of the morning. The man pictured here in the station's CCTV, let's call him Steve, has been arrested for possession of heroin.
Arrest is on suspicion of possession of a controlled substance.
Here in Durham, the police are trialling AI software which could help make decisions about suspects being held in custody.
Leave your shoes there and we'll just do a quick search.
After Steve's been processed, the custody sergeant will enter his details into a system called the Harm Assessment Risk Tool, or HART for short. It's an artificial intelligence tool designed to help custody sergeants make decisions about what to do with a suspect.
And this allows us to target the people in terms of our interventions that we've developed to make sure that they don't commit crime in the future.
Everybody that I've spoken to who works with the HART project is very keen to stress that the information that it provides is advisory only and that a human custody sergeant makes all final decisions. But the use of this technology in general is for some people a cause for concern.
This kind of artificial intelligence system in policing relies on big data, and that means that people's privacy is at risk, and it risks us moving more towards a surveillance state. But it also risks discrimination because patterns that exist in data already risk being perpetuated and repeated, and there's very little accountability over it.
And it's this data that privacy campaigners find troubling.
Experience data profiles individuals based on their postcode, their household, and even down to an individual level. And some of these kind of profile stereotypes include terms like disconnected youth, Asian heritage, dependent greys, and people are sorted into these categories. Now, that's bad enough. When that kind of profiling is being used to make decisions about freedom and justice in the UK, I think we really need to just put the brakes on and say, why are we doing this?
It's been revealed that the US National Security Agency collected over 500 million phone records of US citizens last year. That's over triple the number of 2016. And that is despite a new law limiting the spy agency's powers. The US Freedom Act bans the bulk collection of phone records and internet metadata, whilst also limiting government data collection to what is, quote, reasonably practicable. It does, however, permit the gathering of phone and text logs when a link to terrorism is proven. The recent increase in records collected comes in stark contrast to the concerns expressed last year by President Donald Trump.
I think that is a very big surveillance of our citizens. I think that's a very big topic, and it's a topic that should be number one, and we should find out what the hell is going on.
Yo, what up? It's Q-Tip. Right now you watching OK Africa TV. Nah, I'm okay. So just do 20 rolls. I grew up in Queens, New York. 1. My mother's from Montgomery, Alabama. 2. My dad is from Montserrat, from the West Indies. 3. Grew up in Cleveland. 4. I really want to know about where my people come from because I feel like it just answers a lot of questions for me. 5. Spiritually. 6. You know, there's a bunch of generational psychological things that could be answered as well. 7. It's a lot of intrigue for me. 8. I've never been to Africa. 9. I believe that I'm like Zulu. From the South African Zulu. I also believe that I have some Asian in me. How? I think like maybe Mongolia or something like that. I think.
So Alabama's about as far as you can
Alabama, with my mom's side.
With your mom's side. And that's like most of us. We maybe can go back to Alabama or North Carolina. Or what do you know about your mother's line? Your mother, her mother, her mother. What do you know about them?
Not much, but I know that in my baby picture, like when I was born, I looked very Asian.
So we took the DNA that you inherited from your mother, and so we found it in West Africa. This country is known for an instrument called the akonting. Have you heard of that before? It's a lute, and it was the precursor to the banjo, which led to the blues, which led to hip hop. So you have a very important connection to the Jola people living in Guinea-Bissau today.
This is where I'm from. Could you tell me about the people, the Jola people?
I could tell you, but we actually have some Jola people here.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So I'm gonna let them tell you because they can do a much better job than I can.
Wow, that's a surprise.
This is gonna be
Thank you so much, man. Man, I gotta get you playing that on my record or something.
Across the country, and particularly along the coast, evidence of the European presence in the slave trade in the 14th century abound. And just as Ghana bears the marks of colonialism, many parts of the Americas, Europe, and elsewhere also carry proof of aspects of the culture of enslaved Africans who, until their sojourn, knew no other way of life. From the ancestral river park at Saint Manso in the central region, the story is told, for example, of how the Caribbean country of Jamaica was named by Akan slaves.
The term Jamaica, as it refers, it wasn't the indigenous people who named it as Jamaica, but it was the Akan-speaking people, the slaves who were captured from this place to Jamaica, looking at the terms of condition that they found themselves. Then they say, wow, it seems this place that we have come to stay permanently. Perhaps we have come to stay permanently. In our conversion, we say Jama Yaka. Jama Yaka. Jama means perhaps to stay permanently Yaka. So Jama Yaka. So continue pronunciation, the Anglo-Saxons make it Jamaica, Jamaica, Jamaica.